I remember the day well. July 26, 1949.
Good morning, boys and girls. Hi, it's Uncle Al.
I had no idea that this is the beginning of something, big.
Larry Smith thanking you for watching our show today.
Nick Clement!
Now, with the news, here's Al Chafalcati.
And we begin with that breaking news.
It was magic. The whole thing was magic.
Welcome to WCPO's 70th anniversary special. I'm Tanya O'Rourke. For the next hour, we are going to take you back in time. You know, Night on Your Side, whether you watch us on air or online, started out on the radio as WCPO 1230. CPO stood for Cincinnati Post Organization, the newspaper owned by our parent company, EW Scripps. We started as Channel 7, not 9, and our first night on the air featured Cincinnati's favorite pastime. WCPO's first night of broadcast featured the Reds game versus the Braves live from Crosley Field.
And it was pouring down rain all day long.
Fears the game would be called prompted this man, Mort Waters, the man Scripps tasked with starting the station, to step in. The governor was backing out too.
If you do Mort, the governor was not allowed to make other plans. The governor had an obligation to be here, and the governor did show up. And the game was played.
Mort Waters was an innovator.
I remember the day well. July 26, 1949. We're about to officially put Channel 7, WCPO TV, on the air.
He had been the general manager of WCPO Radio. He was convinced the future was television. He was right. It was his vision that formed WCPO TV.
It's funny, if you go back at the time, people thought that television would be an extension of the newspaper. Pretty soon TV took on its own personality and its own place in the market.
The big hit? A pantomime show. Yes, pantomime. These folks were masters of not singing, but imitating the music being played. It was a wildly successful bit of early local television.
And like a laughing brook that dances in
Any guess who that is pantomiming? It's a young Bob Braun, who would go on to sing for real on his own show on a different TV station.
Whatever we did was okay, because if it moved, if you could see and hear something, the people were fascinated by it.
One cigarette, dear.
But the big star? Dottie Mack. Mort Waters understood what people wanted in the early days of television, and it was essentially radio on TV.
This is my song.
Mack didn't sing any of these songs, but she was a star nonetheless. 30 years ago, Dottie shared this memory with us.
I have a son who is 28 years old, and he has looked at these tapes and he couldn't quite understand, well, what kind of talent is this? This is Rosemary Clooney singing and you're mouthing. I said, honey, in those days, this was talent.
Cincinnati has always loved weather. And another one of Waters' hits, Ramona and the Weather, a 5-minute weathercast.
I think I would prefer our furnace city, Yuma, Arizona, where lucky humans bask in 86-degree sunshine.
Which became Paula Predicts in 1958, when Paula Jane Schultz, now Paula Waters, took over.
Across the Mississippi Valley region by early tomorrow and then begin to dissipate there.
She was ill one night. They asked me to do the show, and that was the beginning of that.
Good morning, boys and girls. Hi, it's Uncle Al. Are we going to have fun today on the farm? Don't go away, because we're going to sing and dance and have all the things to do. See you in a second. Ouch!
But perhaps Waters' biggest hit? Of course, it was the Uncle Al Show. Coming up, the early shows of WCPO, including everyone's favorite, Uncle Al. First, a young Nick Clooney. Do you remember his show on WCPO? When our 70th anniversary special returns. For television in its earliest days, getting on the air was one concern. What to broadcast, how to fill up all that time, well, that was another issue. And it led to a lot of experimenting. Some successful shows like The Uncle Al Show, some not so successful. Watch this and see how many shows you remember. Bob Shrieve, who had a late-night movie show on WCPO, did virtually anything you wanted.
I just said, look at that little red light, and when that goes on, start singing, or when the band gives the introduction, start singing, you know.
Called The Fourth Stooge, Shrieve went on to host multiple shows for a generation.
It's the Lynn Mink Show. Yeah, they're all here at TV Dance Party, coming your way from the Coca-Cola Bottling Works Auditorium. Boy, they're here too, I'll tell you. Let's see, we have them from Simon Kenton, do we, huh? Maysville, Boone County.
Springtime, a musical special about a special season in Cincinnati with singer Larry Kentley.
Here it comes. Is Elvis still the king?
Can Byright break new ground?
Did Cincinnati Magazine tame the wild man?
Everyone's talking about it.
What was your favorite part, Pat?
God, it had to be Randy blowing that trombone.
Can you roll tape again, please?
I still think we should call it The Son of Celebrate Cincinnati, the sequel, Part 2.
Well, hi. Welcome to Movie Matinee. This is your hostess, Wanda Lewis, and I want you to sit down with us for about an hour and a half.
Big John. Big John. Big Bad John.
King of the Hot Pants Lovers, Nick Clemens!
Good, yeah, stand up there. Come in. Wait a minute.
Karen, you have a right to be represented by an attorney. You want to exercise that right?
Long before Judge Judy, Judge Paul Trevor presided over cases on Cincinnati airwaves for 8 years on juvenile court.
In the interest of exploring a vital social issue, WCPO TV presents Juvenile Court.
Revolutionary for its time, the format is now used worldwide. These cases were taken from the files of Cincinnati Juvenile Court. The actors were local school children or community theater members.
I didn't even know what I was doing until it was done, but I'm glad I did it because you deserved every bit of it. Maybe I'm not the only one who needs a little knocking around. Shame on you.
So you're not sorry for it. You think she deserved it.
Yes.
And almost always, the lines were ad-libbed. In the fall of 1957, 18-year-old Larry Smith walked out of high school and onto the set of his own show. And Cincinnati fell in love with Rudy the Rooster and Teaser the Mouse.
We and our guys. How's the plant coming along?
We were accepted into the homes, and that was something that was so unique. We were friends. We were like somebody you had in for coffee or tea or milk or cookies.
Rudy, Teaser, and all the rest were brought to life by Larry Smith, including...
Well, that probably threw the microphone off. Good evening or afternoon. Hello there. Oh, it's good to see you all. 'Tis I, one and only, Hattie the Witch.
Hello there. My name is Snarfy R.
Spooky #1 Ghost Rider.
Wyatt Earp. He makes me burp.
Well,
hello there. My name's Teaser the Mouse. I'm one of the oldest characters that started in television.
Smith told us he got his ideas for characters by walking downtown and observing people for his show, The Contemporaries.
Thank you, and welcome to you friends of The Contemporaries.
Hooray! I'm going away with the man in the little white coat.
In 1999, Cincinnati tried something new, hosting a marathon, and WCPO TV was the first to bring the Flying Pig to you live.
The Flying Pig Marathon was a big challenge the first year we did it. We had to figure out where to put cameras, and once the runners go by, that camera is dead. No, we need to move it to another location because we want to be at at that spot.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us. And get ready to peek inside some fabulous tri-state homes.
If you watch HGTV, started by our parent company, you can thank WCPO's Around the House.
Channel 9's long been a test bed for this company, a place where we bring entrepreneurial ideas, put them to work, and then learn from our mistakes, and then take the learnings and take those projects and spread them across the country. So oftentimes here in Cincinnati, our consumers are seeing things on Channel 9 that we then take nationwide.
And who can forget the WEBN fireworks? For years, WCPO was the station that brought the fireworks into your living room each Labor Day weekend.
We had 22 cameras. We had cameras on a barge coming up. We had people everywhere. And I think our coverage of Riverfest just took it to another level, which it deserved.
Virtually every kid in the tri-state wanted to be on the Uncle Al show, including me. Coming up, we take a look at the longest-running children's show in U.S. history and how it's remembered today. The most memorable of all WCPO shows, the Uncle Al Show. And if you grew up in Cincinnati in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s, you probably clamored to be on it. And likely you learned the hokey pokey from Uncle Al and Captain Wendy.
Put your right hand in, you take your right hand out, you close your right. Everybody sing a dance, shake it all about.
Uncle Al just had a way with kids.
Not only did I really like kids, but I found that I had an ability to kneel down and talk to them on their level, eye to eye with them. And I held out my hands, they would run to me.
Here we go.
Nothing lasted longer than 3 minutes because you could sense you were losing their attention. So boom, let's switch the tempo, let's run across the studio and get in the streetcar or build a building or something like that. We never let them get bored.
I'll blow my magic horn and we'll look up into the sky. And maybe we see Captain Wendy up so very high.
Hi, boys and girls.
Uncle Al and Captain Wendy, husband and wife duo, were dynamic. Through 15,000 shows, they raised 2 generations of kids in the Cincinnati area and taught them to sing, dance, and have a lot of fun.
I'm one of thousands of kids who have a black and white picture of themselves on the Uncle Al show.
This whole town, I think, was on Uncle Al at one period of time.
Good morning, boys and girls. Hi, it's Uncle Al. Are we going to have fun today on the farm? Don't go away because we're going to sing and dance and have all the things to do. See you in a second. Ouch!
Parents called the station from near and far begging to get their child a chance to be on the show, a chance to sing and dance with Uncle Al and his gaggle of happy friends.
This is one of the few things they remember in their whole life as a happy time, getting on the Uncle Al show and becoming a part of it that they watched at home, stuck in their mind.
For 35 years, the longest-running children's show in America, they made children smile. And how, 30 years ago, did Uncle Al tell us he wanted to be remembered?
He came, he played his music, he drew his pictures, he made children laugh, and he loved every minute of it.
It didn't take long for WCPO to find itself a newsman, another Al. And when it was 11 o'clock, it was time for the Al Shuttlecotty News. Coming up on our 70th anniversary special, the birth of our storied newsroom and the biggest stories in our history. In 1959, WCPO management convinced a newsman named Al Shuttlecotty to come to television with the help of this transmitter. This is what keeps us on the air today. Shuttlecotty never looked back, and for 27 years led WCPO's newsroom. What he and his team created is the stuff of legends.
11 o'clock, and time for the Al Shuttlecotty News, brought to you tonight and every night with the H&S Boat Company, Cincinnati's quality department stores downtown and the Kenwood Plaza. And now with the news, here's Al Shuttlecotty, featured columnist of the Cincinnati Enquirer.
Good evening. Cincinnati's Neil McElroy.
Al Shuttlecotty defined television news style for the nation. Dogged journalist.
Good afternoon. Al Shuttlecotty here with the news of '59. Our WCPO TV cameras lived it, and filmed it.
Tough as nails editor, straightforward reporting and anchoring.
There is a new and closer familiarity with the warfare in Beirut tonight.
And of course, his Spotlight Report.
And now, here's tonight's Spotlight Report.
There's a movie premiere scheduled for tomorrow night at the Valley Theater. The Gene Krupa story.
Schottelkotte ran what some would call a tight ship.
Al Schottelkotte was a visionary. He was also just a bare-knuckles newsman.
He demanded much of his reporters, including the way they looked and what they drove.
If there's a choice between someone's convenience and comfort and getting our job done, we're going to get our job done.
In the very early, like the first, second year when I worked for Al, I didn't think I was going to make it to the end of the week because of his persona.
I have used up all my other resources. I didn't know what else to do. So I just decided I would call Al and see if he could help me.
It was Al's help, specifically his investigative report that helped clear this Woodlawn man of false imprisonment. He set the stage for the kind of journalism you expect from WCPO. Even an art thief turned to Al Schottelkotte as the only person he would trust to return a stolen Rembrandt.
It appears to have been defaced just a bit down in this area here. Do you know if that was there, or is that something new?
My guess it would be new, but there's no possible way I could say that.
Schottelkotte created a team of hard-nosed reporters, including one of the best in the business, Alan Wyatt.
Sheriff, community standards are much different today.
Wyatt became one of the most recognized newsmen in the city.
Back in the 60s, we had a very small staff, and our staff built slowly. At the very beginning, Al was the news director and the newscaster. I was the reporter and the staff.
There was no phony baloney in the news. It was just news. It was just news is all they put on that 15 minutes and then eventually a half hour. And that was in the bloodstream. That was in the bones and the DNA of this organization for 70 years.
Now tell me, now that you're out of public office, does it still bother you to have reporters like myself dogging you continually? No, that's part of the game.
We really didn't know what we were doing. There were no textbooks on the subject. There were really no precedents. We came to work every day, and every day was a brand new adventure. Something was different, and it was fun. Back then, what we considered a special coup on a news story was to get a photographer on a scene of a breaking news story, shoot a Polaroid picture, and get that Polaroid picture back to the studio and get it on the news, and that was good.
Do you believe Ratterman's story that he was drugged?
No, sir.
What do you believe?
I believe... Without knowing it, we had, I guess, what was the first live remote news broadcast in Cincinnati television. This was during the Ratterman trial in Newport in the early 60s, and it was a sensational trial.
Mrs. Ratterman, you have...
We did live interviews with the cast of the Ratterman trial, and it was good television. That was the first live remote.
Mrs. Verona, I don't understand your claims that you're suppressed and discriminated against. From what I observe, American womanhood never had it so good. You disagree?
Yes, of course I disagree.
The theory that we tried to practice in our news during those years was this: to ask a person the question that they would least like for you to ask them.
Sir, we didn't hear how you traded 3 bribery charges for one obstruction of justice. Can't you explain that one to me? Mr. Lees, don't you feel that this is worthy of a comment?
Dogged journalists asking hard questions, holding people accountable in our community, always on your side. It's what set WCPO News apart and made us #1 for decades. And the tradition endures with the 9 on Your Side I-Team and daily reporting that stays true to our company's motto, give light and the people will find their own way. Coming up, we take a look back at the big stories you will never forget and the storytelling that changed Cincinnati and the world.
Greater Cincinnati has seen its fair share of giant stories. The Carrollton Bus Crash, the Who tragedy, Pete Rose. Big stories that made national headlines. WCPO was there for all of them, including the one that happened on this site in northern Kentucky more than 40 years ago. It was an inferno. The fire at the Beverly Hills Supper Club in 1977 killed 165 people and injured more than 200.
The smoke was so dark. I can remember that the people were screaming, "Fire, fire, get out!"
The nightclub fire remains the second most deadly in U.S. history. Reporting on the story and the lawsuits that followed prompted changes in building codes across the U.S.
What you're watching now is the Cincinnati police as they made their move today against the Contemporary Arts Center, spurring a legal showdown over the controversial Robert Mapplethorpe exhibit.
The showdown over community values. It was 1990. Sheriff Simon Lee's and obscenity on one side of the issue, Museum Director Dennis Berry and artistic expression on the other. Artistic expression won, and WCPO was there, a pivotal moment as general opinion in Hamilton County shifted.
It's just an expression of art form, that's all.
It's now day 4 and still no sign of missing 3-year-old Marcus Fiesel.
A community searched for a little boy who wouldn't be found alive. His foster parents, Liz and David Carroll, left him for dead, bound in a closet, then burned his body in this chimney. Coverage of the story helped change the foster care system forever.
He's up at the top and everybody's just pushing. I was on the bottom for about 20 minutes. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was dying.
1979, the Who concert tragedy at what is now U.S. Bank Arena. First come, first served, or festival seating, led to pushing and shoving so bad that 11 people were crushed to death.
And people were pushing all over everywhere.
Festival seating is now banned in the U.S. because of that deadly night.
Save this poor, innocent scapegoat.
22-year-old Otto Warmbier held in a North Korean jail until they returned him, comatose and near death. Good evening, everyone. Otto Warmbier is finally home. Chopper 9 captured him being carted off a plane and into University Hospital, where he died days later.
I remember the heat, the flames, the chaos, the screaming children, everything.
Impossible to forget. The Carrollton Bus Crash in 1988 ended 27 lives, injured many more, and changed thoughts on drinking and driving and bus safety across the nation. Larry Mahoney was drunk and crashed into the bus full of kids as it returned from a day at Kings Island.
Our coverage of that bus crash made a difference.
Tragedy rocks Fountain Square. A gunman opens fire at the Fifth Third Bank headquarters downtown. The first mass shooting right in the heart of the city. 4 dead, 2 hurt. From the scene and the incredible response of the police officers to the shooter's home, in the air and on the ground, we covered the single most important story of 2018. We do want to begin, though, with our co-anchor Craig McKee, who is leading our coverage from downtown.
We want you to listen to some of the reaction from those who were here when chaos rang out.
They were right outside the door. There was nowhere that we can go. The thing we could do was protect each other.
Easter Day, 1993. Prisoners at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville stage a riot and standoff that lasted for 11 days. 9 prisoners killed by rioters, correctional guards held hostage, and one of them killed. A list of demands read live on our air.
There'll be no reprisals once this is over. Because in the past, Lucasville has had the reputation for killing innocent people.
First exposure to something cataclysmic, I could say. And that close. It wasn't New York, wasn't Rikers Island. This is right here.
Park it over here so we keep everybody together.
October 15th of 1980, WCPO became the news. James Hoskins took over the newsroom at gunpoint. He had killed his girlfriend in Over the Rhine and wanted to say his piece. Reporter Elaine Green, at gunpoint, was forced to interview him on camera. Other employees were held hostage.
The man who had barricaded himself in here 12 hours ago for 2 hours, holding 9 of our employees hostage, has ended his own life.
Harambe and outrage on both sides when sharpshooters took his life because a child had fallen into his enclosure at the Cincinnati Zoo.
From tragedy to triumph, Fiona the hippo defied the odds and survived being born premature at the zoo. Happy birthday to you! And every milestone, virtually every step this adorable girl takes is now celebrated worldwide. Moo! This cow, dubbed Cincy Freedom, had more moxie than most, escaping the slaughterhouse, leading Cincinnati on a multi-day search and rescue mission on the ground and from the air. She was ultimately captured and saved by famed artist Peter Max, who let her live out her days on a farm. Remember Tall Stacks? Cincinnati's every 4-year festival that brought all the big paddle wheelers to Cincinnati and people from all over the country to our riverbanks.
Oh, look at everybody! This is an incredible crowd.
It felt like almost all of Greater Cincinnati was on the riverbanks for the WEBN Riverfest fireworks. For those who couldn't make it, WCPO brought the fireworks to them. Equally spectacular, Luminosity, the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra, and Brave Berlin's audio-visual mashup that took our breath away. And WCPO was the station to bring the beautiful light show to the comfort of your home, which led those Brave Berlin folks to create Blink in 2017. It made people walk Cincinnati at night and take in the visual spectacles projected onto buildings and see their city in a totally different way.
And when Blink returns this fall, WCPO, of course, will have it covered for you on air and online because WCPO is Cincinnati. And we'll continue to bring you the big stories and the memorable moments that make our communities special. The biggest stories we've covered over the past 70 years also find their place in our nation's history. Pivotal moments for civil rights played out in the Cincinnati area, bringing with them some change, including right here at Coney Island.
It is the world's largest filtered pool right in our backyard, but one woman is credited with making sure everyone has access. Marion Spencer used her own persistence in 1952 to win a legal fight for equality at Sunlight Pool inside the Coney Island amusement park. Spencer passed away earlier this month.
Now I believe anything is possible.
One of the nation's most prolific civil rights champions also made Cincinnati stops several times in the 1960s.
We must continue to develop and maintain a sense of dignity and self-respect.
Racial tension in Cincinnati hit a fever pitch some 4 decades later when police officer Stephen Roach shot and killed an unarmed Timothy Thomas in Over the Rhine.
Right at the corner of 13th and Republic, there was an encounter with this individual that was wanted. There was one shot fired by the officer.
Within 24 hours, riots started.
We had to be very intentional on how we were reporting the story, making sure each side was represented. And in the middle of this, downtown was shut down.
And we were there when Thomas's mother confronted city council.
And you tell me why no one from the police department informed me of my son being shot.
The officer who shot Thomas was acquitted of negligent homicide.
I always call it my racial awakening because I did not realize at that time there was such a disparity in how people felt looking at the same issue. And this was the issue of policing in Cincinnati.
History repeated itself in 2015 near the University of Cincinnati campus.
Go and take your seatbelt.
UC officer Ray Tenzing shoots an unarmed Sam DuBose during a traffic stop. 2 different trials resulted in a hung jury. We provided gavel-to-gavel coverage of both trials.
Thought my arm became trapped in a steering wheel somehow.
And we made sure Sam DuBose's family had a voice.
Definitely hard to know that we have a society that allows this.
The civil unrest and rocky relations between police and the community resulted in a collaborative agreement in the early 2000s. It set the standard for policing across the country.
The question is, will developers finally tackle Vine Street?
News managers tasked investigative reporter Lori Quinlivan with uncovering other problems in Over the Rhine after the riots in April of 2001. This I-Team investigation turned into an hour-long documentary called Visions of Vine Street, resulting in real solutions and change.
as the station has for 70 years, that we've got to think about the community first.
Accountability is a mainstay of the I-Team.
When this police officer needs help, he may have to wait.
In 2013, investigative reporter Brendan Keefe exposed major problems with the city's 911 system. And who can forget the controversy over cost overruns on construction of Paul Brown Stadium?
The next step is for us to source the overrun, to figure out who goofed.
In the early 1990s, Clyde Gray's reporting got a state law changed with his series on rebuilt wrecks. He even testified before state lawmakers.
Car buyers think they are getting good, low-mileage cars, and they are paying top dollar.
But even before that, WCPO made its mark with hard-hitting investigative journalism when it helped crack the hospital serial killer case and bring down Donald Harvey.
Our investigation reveals that staff members at Drake began raising questions of their own about Harvey and what they believed were unusual deaths at least 7 months before his arrest, but that their concerns apparently were ignored.
And you know, that I-Team bong means something. It's not just a promotional tool. When people see that, they go, okay, what have they found now?
Coming up, a nod to some of our technological milestones, how the culture of our newsroom has changed, and what WCPO's future has in store for you. But first, a look back at some of the biggest sports and weather stories. In the history of this television station, nothing has changed more than broadcast meteorology. So who better to tell us how weather impacts you than Chief Meteorologist Steve Raleigh?
Well, from the infancy of radar to the dual polarization of today, we've tracked it all to keep you safe.
Whether it's tornadoes, snowstorms, or anything in between, 70 years of weather presents a challenge.
It's very bad, but to give you a complete rundown, we just can't do it at this time, or it's impossible.
It struck as many as 6 different areas of Xenia and its outlying areas.
It was so wide, it was so tall. It was scary. You know, you have no clue what's going to happen.
In January 1977, the temperature dropped to 25 degrees below zero. It's never been colder. Our film cameras captured 12 inches of ice built up on the water, so you didn't need a bridge to cross the Ohio. Ice built up again in 78, but there was a bigger issue that year. As meteorologists, we call it a storm of unprecedented magnitude. Snowfall piled up to nearly 4 feet. Drifts nearly buried homes because wind gusts hit 100 miles per hour. In 70 years, 9 on Your Side has also spent countless time covering Ohio River flooding. In 97, the river caused significant trouble, 13 feet above flood stage, rising to 65 feet. Water surrounded Synergy Field on 3 sides. In Blue Ash and Montgomery, an EF4 leveled homes in April of 1999.
Be grateful my wife and son are alive.
What did you say to them? What did you do when you first saw them?
So they cried.
Covering weather into the 2000s brought something that never happened to us before. The remnants of Hurricane Ike stayed strong enough to create wind gusts to over 80 miles per hour. March 2nd, 2012 was historic. No single day has seen more tornadoes in the tri-state. A dozen twisters touched down, killing 9 people in the process. Moscow, Ohio, Piner and Critton in Kentucky, Holton, Indiana took the biggest hits.
Basically dove on top of my daughter and took off running to the bathroom.
Unfortunately, seeing more unprecedented weather is likely into our next 70 years. Yet, as our parent company's president of local media says,
As long as this television station's owned by Scripps and Scripps is in this community, I feel with a lot of certainty that we will be able to keep this community safe.
While we've covered a lot of big weather stories around here, this town is also known as a big sports town.
It sure is. From high school to college to professional sports, John Popovich and his sports team have your team covered.
Tanya, Steve, I got to tell you, growing up as a kid, I had 2 great interests, sports and history. And when I came to Channel 9 40 years ago, I discovered I was able to pursue both of those things in the very same place.
Outside, we're still looking young and hearty. But let's take you inside, where you can't hide the wrinkles, where TV was first made up. where Cincinnati's memories were first glued together.
Well, the UC team is back here inside. This is Al Shuttlecotty.
The national champion Bearcats came back in 1961 in a blaze of black and white glory.
It's been a great place. There's been a lot of memories here.
Film had turned to color by the time the Reds left Crosley, and a new era took shape on a once barren riverfront. There we celebrated a couple of championships. Sports had transitioned, so did TV. It was the advent of videotape and live reports.
Here comes the snow again. Or is that confetti?
That's snow. Everybody covers the Findlay Market Parade now. We did it first in 1977.
Live from Greater Cincinnati Airport, the champs come home.
The Bengals also got good. We went live with Who Day Madness on a Sunday night.
Congratulations. Did you expect this kind of there's never been anything like this in Cincinnati. It's unbelievable.
It was just starting.
It was cold here at Riverfront for the AFC Championship game.
That's Channel 9's Bob Hillman on the day of the Freezer Bowl in 1982. 59 below. We sent a handful of reporters to Super Bowl 16 in balmy Pontiac. 7 years later, the Bengals did it again, this time getting the Super Bowl 23. We sent half the station to Miami to cover that one. Channel 9 was an innovator. Sports of all sorts started in 1980. The boss said, let's do this for 13 weeks. We're still doing it 39 years later.
Live from the Cincinnati Gardens.
Channel 9 put Xavier basketball on the air. Some memorable, bitterly played shootouts included, like the time Xavier won, Bob Huggins wouldn't shake hands. And it's hard to imagine this now, but in 1990, we got the Big Red Machine back together for one weekend to play a baseball game at the redone Crosley Field.
Hello, Pete. Welcome back.
We always tried to bring you the inside story. In the lobby, when Pete came back. In the dugout, when he slid into third. On the catwalk, when he broke the record. In a sweaty conference room, when he got kicked out. There have been lows, but there have been plenty of highs, too.
Hello again, everyone.
1990 was the last time we had a big Let It Loose celebration to cover. I think we're due for another one. Inside WCPO, we do see the past, but we look to the future, and more memories keep coming.
Look at all that videotape and that film, and now we're down to a memory card.
So tiny.
For all of our videos. So technology has changed a lot, but really when you think about it, the people, the games, and the stories are really what still count.
And you know, John, sports, weather, news, not everything we do is on the internet or on TV. Coming up, we take a look at our role in the community and how you help us help our neighbors. Giving back to Cincinnati may be the least seen part of what we do, but we believe it's one of the most important responsibilities of being a news station. From toys,
Toy Team 9, we are fine raising toys for kids,
to books,
lightning shot out of the wand and hit Clifford with a jolt,
to a day to dream.
Oh, that meant everything.
WCPO's work beyond television means asking our neighbors to step up and help us so we can help the community.
The station as a whole was always cared about the community.
For 19 years, our Mona Morrow has led Channel 9 in community affairs. In 2011, WCPO created Toy Team 9, our annual holiday toy drive for kids and families in need. It's still going strong today.
People bring toys or can buy toys at Kroger, and they bring toys for these nonprofits who distribute them to families during the Christmas time.
In 2017, we started Day to Dream in partnership with the Cincinnati Reds, Morris Home, and St. Vincent de Paul to build beds for children who don't have one. And what's a comfy bed to sleep in if you don't have books to read at night? The Scripps Howard Foundation, the corporate foundation of our parent company, the E.W. Scripps Company, gives tens of thousands of books away to kids across the country, including right here in Cincinnati.
We've always been there in the front of helping others. I think that's why we've been 9 on your side now for 15 years or longer.
We are on your side to make life better, especially when disasters hit.
9 on your side is hosting a special phone bank right now.
We've raised tens of thousands of dollars over the years to help families rebuild after devastating tornadoes.
So much more damage than they expected.
And we make sure you stay informed about issues important to our community.
This Week in Cincinnati on 9 on Your Side.
Our Sunday morning public affairs show, This Week in Cincinnati, breaks down the big issues. On All Sides, a tradition that started with a different show called Hot Seat years ago. And then there was Black Memo, an influential weekly show founded by Hasker Nelson in 1974. He was our public affairs director for nearly 30 years.
Are just human beings. People at our company, like me, go out and just sort of do some stuff in the community just because it's the right thing to do.
He left a legacy that's now part of the work we continue to do to make a difference. The people of WCPO are the heart of what we do. And as technology has changed through the years, so has the culture of our station. Television, the internet, streaming. We have the biggest stories and the most important information covered everywhere these days. And it takes a big team to pull it off every day of the year.
But the one thing you can never forget, it still takes a person to tell a story.
Decades ago, most of those journalists at WCPO were men, with a few women, like forecaster Paula Waters, in supporting roles. Back then, our visuals were on black and white film. By the mid-1960s, we advanced to color.
There were 2 times a day we dropped off the film, one for the early news, one for the later news. And we had to get it there to get it processed, otherwise it wouldn't be in color.
And in 1967, we deployed one of the first news-gathering helicopters in the country, known as Newsbird. We've also transitioned from film to tape.
You were limited to what you could shoot because when it was unwound, you'd have to wind it back up again. You only had one lens to use, so if you needed to get closer or further back, that was a problem.
Today we broadcast digitally in high definition. We get content on TV and online for you so fast. That news chopper is now Chopper 9. And we have another news bird in our fleet called Sky 9, a quadcopter drone with a camera. The news team has also evolved.
When I had the interview, Al said, we have 2 jobs open. A reporter's job and a producer's job. The producer's job pays more.
Women now lead content coverage.
I think we had as many women in the newsroom as we did men, even in the early 90s.
And that changes how we cover stories that are important to the tri-state.
The big piece is that you're making a difference in people's lives.
We are never satisfied, and WCPO is committed to evolving behind the scenes to reflect the community and meet its needs. Jack Howard, longtime president of Scripps Howard Broadcasting, once said, "The spirit of those who work here is the one thing that's remained unchanged over the years." And that remains true today as we celebrate 70 years of WCPO. Thank you for making Channel 9 part of your lives. And we look forward to coming into your home for many years to come. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us.